Getting the check from the customers is one of the hardest problems in the enterprises.
What was the moment where you realized this is exactly what I want to do with Kloudfuse?
We used to spend hours, days, sometimes it goes into weeks to troubleshoot a particular incident. That was the beginning of the journey for the Kloudfuse.
Why isn't it fully agentic?
The agent can tell you like, hey, these are the 5 or 6 potential problems, but to get to the real root cause, the human brain has to get involved.
What is it that makes you very robust? Do you think people can build companies like this outside of Silicon Valley?
Think of like the brightest people in one area.
So what is your secret recipe or sauce for assessing the TAM and the timing?
One advice I would go to the budding founders or the entrepreneurs is like, go talk to the customers. They will tell you the real problems.
What does it take to raise money from someone like Sequoia? What is your investment thesis like? Welcome to another fantastic episode of Control podcast. This is a place where we bring the best of the breed from Silicon Valley. And I have the pleasure and honor of speaking with Krishna Yaddanapavar. He is an infrastructure pioneer. He has associated with the who's who, the best of the breed in technology in Silicon Valley. To name it, labels like Cisco, Sequoia Capital, and many more. So Krishna's story is very unique. He comes from a small town in India and he has made his way. He's self-made. He makes it to Stanford and he builds one successful company after another. So let's begin our conversation with Krishna Yaddanapavar, who is shaping the future of infrastructure in Silicon Valley. Krishna, welcome to Control podcast.
Thanks, Vikati. Nice to be here.
Wonderful. Krishna, tell us all about your journey. You started at EMC and Veritas, and then you moved to VMware, and you rolled out Springpath, which was acquired by Cisco. Followed by that, you are on another startup, Kloudfuse, which is making waves in observability, one of the hottest spaces for data, DevOps, DevSecOps, and AI. So you've been associated with big labels like Sequoia, and you many investors backing. Basically, you're always in an oversubscribed round raising funds. So tell us, who is the person from a small town in India, Harvard? And then I remember the East Coast, you working at EMC and Veritas. I see you struggle through your mood-liking phase. Give us 30,000 feet overview of this amazing entrepreneurial journey.
Okay. So let me start. My background started, I did my schooling from like Harvard, and then I ended up with BRITS Pilani. So even in the high school days also, I used to participate in like a lot of like maths, physics, Olympiad, but it was all at like regional, state, and the national level. Then I got into BRITS Pilani. It was a really good exposure for us because you have the brightest mind from India. BRITS is one of the premier institutes, similar to the IITs. There I did like a lot of work in the computer science, especially with the focus of operating systems, databases, and data. I really love about the data because data is the king. So I was very lucky to do my internship at Veritas. And that internship played a key pivotal role in my life. And I transitioned to US immediately after the internship.
Wow.
I worked with like a bunch of companies like Veritas, EMC, Commvault. And then there was this small startup called VMware in Palo Alto, which had roughly around like a couple of hundreds of people, but really sharp people from Stanford, Princeton, MIT. I interviewed there. I really liked the people. I joined when it was like a small startup. And then immediately VMware got acquired by EMC. Because of my data background, I contributed significantly to the data architecture at VMware. I co-authored this file system called Virtual Machine File System, which was like zettabytes worth of data, and worked with like the brightest minds. And as I spent almost close to a decade at VMware, I realized that because the data is so critical, we can disrupt by building a hyper-converged infrastructure. That's when I started my journey with like Springpath with my co-founder from IIT Kanpur, Malik. And we're like just bright engineers didn't have much background in the business, although we had an idea how to build the company, how to build the team, how to go to the customers. Then we happened to talk to a couple of the investors on the Sandhill Road, and happened to meet one of the top tier 1 investor from Sequoia. And literally within days, from Friday to Monday, we ended up with a term sheet.
Wow.
So that's how the journey with the Springpath started. Then we grew the team, we grew the business, and then in 2015 timeframe, all the server vendors woke up and they say hey, this is a piece of the software. We want it to run on our hardware, like the servers. Bring storage components, networking components, security components. And the one ideal marriage was with Cisco. Cisco invested in the company. Cisco did an OEM relationship. That OEM relationship took off. And then Cisco decided to pull the trigger. And we sold the company for close to $320 million plus the retention to Cisco. And then inside Cisco, that product was called HyperFlex. It became the key foundation for the server virtualization for Cisco, what they used to call it as the software-defined storage. Cisco was known for software-defined networking. So we added another arm to it called software-defined storage. And that business grew to multiple hundreds of millions, more than 400 million plus. Then after almost 2.5 years at Cisco, because once you are in that startup mind, you'll always be thinking what is the disruption?
Yeah.
I was talking to a lot developers like me, because I come from the deep technical background. I ended up thinking hey, if I can build a platform where it thinks like the brain in the form of the causal graph, bringing the data and the intelligence together, that is the beginning of Kloudfuse. Again, I came up with a team which came from VMware and Springpath, and then we started Kloudfuse. And we ended up building the entire Observability data lake where the data, intelligence, automation can be done very efficiently. Again, we raised the money from the top tier investors and grew the business. At this time, I focused more on how to get the product, what they call as the product market value, product market fit, and go to market so that we actually solve the customer problem.
Yeah.
That's how the business grew.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I came out because I wanted to think fresh in the new AI and agentic era.
So Krishna, you work with the cream of the talent here from IITs and BITS Pilani and Stanford. Do you think people can build companies like this outside of Silicon Valley? Is Silicon Valley having an unfair advantage in the infrastructure and access to capital? Or what do you think about this?
Yeah. So I say that I think it's in the water, probably the Silicon Valley. So it's think of the brightest people in one area, right? Wherever you go, whether you go to the restaurants or playing games, I play volleyball and soccer. People are constantly discussing about hey, I faced this problem, I faced that problem. It's also surrounded by the nearly good set of people from all the big companies, the fans of the world. So that gives the motivation with respect to the problem identification.
Yeah.
Then because of your past, you can build a really strong team.
Yeah.
Now you have the good technology, you have the team. Then the next question comes hey,
capital.
Can I go and raise the capital? Is there a big enough time for the problem? Yeah. And then can I show the initial traction?
Yeah.
And then the timing has to be perfect.
Yeah.
If you look at Springpath and Kloudfuse, the timing was so perfect because everybody were thinking of hyperconvergence back in 2012. There are a lot of articles about observability cost, consolidation being the big problem, and the AI also solving some aspects of it. That's why the Kloudfuse was a really nice journey for us.
So what is your secret recipe or sauce for assessing the TAM and the timing? Because these are very tricky. A lot of people can go wrong.
Yeah.
And many people are talking about the problem, but really, what does it take? Maybe you're solving a problem which is late. A lot of people are already in the red ocean. How do you know the timing is right, and how do you know the TAM is right?
Yeah. So it could be both the cases. You are either late to the problem or either too early to the problem.
Yeah.
Right. When in fact Kloudfuse, when we are pitching the causal graphs, so nobody believed. So now everybody doing the agentic.
So you were ahead. So
in case of Kloudfuse, we were a little bit ahead of time.
Right.
So understanding that TAM, I think, is the one advice I would go to the budding founders or the entrepreneurs is like, go talk to the customers. They will tell you the real problem.
Yeah.
If the problem is repeated across 10 customers, 20 customers, 50, 100, talk to as many as possible. If there is a constant pattern and repeatability, that tells you there's like a problem. Then for every problem, when you propose a solution, ask them like, how much are they ready to pay? Right? That gives you an idea of like what is the potential, like the serviceable market. And based on that, you can calculate what is like the potential TAM.
And how do you get to talk to a customer? Most people, because you don't want to give away the idea too soon.
That is absolutely right. I mean, enforcing an NDA with the customers is like really hard, but you can keep the key IP, but only talk about like the problem and the end state so that they get an idea how the product would look like.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no need for us to talk about the underlying data lake at the Kloudfuse. We only asked the question like, hey, what are the top 5 problems in the Observability?
Yeah.
That led to our like 5 C's, and we ended up building the technology.
Wonderful. That is real genius, your framework of 5 C's. Building on your entire expertise on AI agents, what are you most excited about? A problem which can be solved and will propel technology to the next level in your space. You're like, why isn't this problem in AI being solved?
Yep.
What is that one thing you're waiting for?
Yeah, I've been talking to like quite a few like customers again from my network, quite a few like prospects, quite a few friends and family. So one thing that is consistently coming, like especially me coming from like the data and the enterprise world, all the enterprises want to go to the agentic,
Right.
but they have a very confined space of like their limited data.
Yeah.
If you look at like the commercial solutions like the ChatGPT, they have done really well serving to the end users.
Yeah.
Like people like us, if you go and ask any generic question.
Yeah.
But when within the enterprises, when you ask the enterprise level questions, the questions asked within like Workday, the answers would be completely different if the questions are like asked within eBay or Expedia or Medtronic.
Wow.
Because these are like different segments. With the limited context of the enterprises, can I build a framework or a platform which will enable them to develop the agentic solutions, which is optimized for their data?
Yep.
Is one of the hard problems.
It's a good.
This I have been like thinking over, talking to a lot of like the customers.
Yeah.
Similarly, again, in the data space, there are quite a bit of like issues. There are quite a bit of like problems in like the security space.
Yep.
Security for AI or AI for security and things like that.
Wonderful. I was thinking, what do you think about companies like Glean who are trying to address this problem in their own way? Are there companies who are already doing it, which you feel excited?
There are some companies which have already started that journey by consolidating the data and providing the answers.
Yeah.
That's why I call them as like L2 level. But the moment we go to the next level, like, hey, a particular workflow needs to be like agentified, then it becomes like a little bit harder because you need to establish the right context. The built-in agents cannot solve those problems. You have to work with the customer. In fact, like a platform which will help them build their agents is better than providing the predefined or the pre-configured agents.
Wonderful. So this is we're getting in space of micro LLM or private LLM. Is that right?
Similar to the micro LLM you can think of.
Wonderful. Yeah, from microservices to micro LLMs, you have to shift your thinking. Amazing.
That is true.
Amazing. Wonderful. So Krishna, this is I would say it's a very deeply technical space as you've explored across your journey from VMware to Springpath to Kloudfuse. I just want to get an overarching view. What kind of work did you do at EMC and VMware and Veritas, which laid the foundation for the startups which you have built? These are hot startups. Everybody wants to invest in them. They're oversubscribed. Everybody wants to work for you. So tell me, how did that foundation grow? So what kind of technology did you build in the early days?
So during the Veritas days, I was just out of like college. I got to learn quite a bit about like how to build like large scale distributed systems, file systems, and things like that. And at EMC, I continued that journey because EMC was one of the pioneers in the data virtualization.
Yeah.
And I ended up building network appliance, NAS file head. And then one of my friends from VMware called me, and then we ended up building what is called as the data virtualization layer for the VMware, which laid the foundation. And then I was talking to a lot of the customers, and then pretty much everybody say 80% of the cost for the virtualizations come from the data. So that led to my thinking of hey, should I start something in the data space as an independent company?
Yeah.
And then that was the beginning of our hyperconvergence. This was back in 2011 and 2012, where there were a bunch of other startups like Nutanix, Springpath, Simplicity, which did extremely well in this space.
Wonderful. And now with Kloudfuse, you are entering into something called observability. Of course, it comes from your entire thesis on data. You want to focus more on what can happen with data because data is proliferating in the age of AI. So what was the moment where you realized that this is exactly what I want to do with Kloudfuse, and you saw a really big market opportunity?
So while we were debugging complex distributed systems at Springpath and VMware, we used to spend hours, days, sometimes it goes into weeks to troubleshoot a particular incident or troubleshoot a particular alert.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of the journey for the Kloudfuse.
When you say alert, what does this mean? Is this because the developer has run into a problem, or is this a cybersecurity threat alert?
This is still the developer focused. Think of hey, I have put a system into my production, let's say a particular website, like Expedia.com.
Right.
Then there's a glitch.
Yeah.
Then somebody troubleshooting why that glitch happened. It could be because the backend servers are not oversaturated, or it could be some database errors that are happening.
Yeah.
To get to the root cause of problem, you need to traverse through a lot of data because the underlying system will be quite complex.
Yeah.
Especially with the virtualization, Kubernetes containerization, serverless virtualization, things have become really, really complex. In that context, getting to the root cause, you have to traverse through multiple terabytes to petabytes worth of data.
And you're seeing it on a dashboard, isn't it?
People would have built the dashboard, but the dashboards are for known nodes. But when the new incident comes, it is typically unknown. So there you have to look at what is called as the highest cardinality of your data to see where the root cause of the problem is.
So give me some examples of known unknowns and unknown unknowns.
Unknown unknown could be you saw a misbehavior in my system and you don't know the root cause. So you are starting from the fact that the customer has reported a problem and then you are traversing down. Known node would be hey, I have set an alert.
Yeah.
Let's say if my CPU utilization of a particular server goes more than 85%, alert me. This is a known node. People want to be known. So if you look at the journey, people call it as the monitoring, which is dashboards, alerts. Observability is all about known unknowns and unknown unknowns.
Got it.
For observability, you need quite a bit of data, metrics, logs, events, traces, which is what the developers deal with, which is what we used to deal with when we were troubleshooting at Springpath.
Yeah.
That's how we ended up the idea of Kloudfuse, and then we built the data lake and then the intelligence layer to get to the root cause of the problem.
Amazing. So if you look at your work at Springpath, you have 20 plus patents. What was so novel at the time when you were working, for which you landed so many patents? And what did Cisco like about you? In what way did you augment their capabilities?
Because we were building the hyperconverged infrastructure.
So hyperconverged, explain. What
So you are essentially trying to bring the storage and the compute together in a box. Think inside the Google data centers, the Google has done an amazing job by bringing together all the different elements of the infrastructure in their data center.
Right.
But if you go to enterprises, they used to buy, hey, I need one vendor for virtualization, one vendor for server, one vendor for data and storage, another vendor for security or networking. So we converge all of them together in an appliance, and we used to ship appliance.
Got it.
It is converged because the data and virtualization are converged. it is Hyperconverged, which was the hypervisor, like VMware virtualization stack, or like the Kubernetes container virtualization stack is running on those appliances. But when you are building that hyperconverged infrastructure, you have to look into multiple aspects. You have to reduce the resources needed to run that appliance. So we did quite a bit innovation with respect to data footprint. Things like, hey, can I do like better compression or deduplication? Solving it in a distributed way is one of the hard problems. In a distributed environment, so many things can go wrong. How do you build the reliability, availability, serviceability of the system at the highest level is what we focused on. So essentially, we ended up building a highly scalable storage system to meet the needs of the virtualization, which is highly reliable, available, and serviceable.
So based on all your experience, now you're setting more towards data and Kloudfuse. Do you think with the AI layer, things have got automated and you're leveraging that speed and propulsion which AI is doing? I know you're interested in working on agents in your current stint, but really, did you see that jump in efficiency?
In fact, it's like a very funny story, right? So back in like 2020, when I came out of Springpath and Cisco journey, I was pitching to the investors that, hey, I want to build traversal of large amount of data, like the way LLMs do, and build sort of like causal graphs. Back then, the technology wasn't there with respect to the neural networks. And now, coming like 23, 24, the models have evolved, whether it is like SLMs or the LLMs. People are adopting different models to sort of like do the work which the humans were used to.
Yeah.
Troubleshooting, there is quite a bit of like human element that goes into system. So at Kloudfuse, we took like both the approach. The approach was like, hey, if you are using any agentic system, how do you observe those? So that became one of the data streams for us. And hence we built what is called as the LLM observability or the agentic observability.
Nice.
There was another element. How can I leverage the AI to troubleshoot things like anomaly detection, correlation, causation, so that we can get to the root cause of the problem for a given alert or incident?
Amazing. So Krishna, I was watching your interview, which you did on Cube, and it's an amazing interview. You talk about 5 C's, which form the foundation framework of your Lego startup Kloudfuse in observability. Do you want to explain what the 5 C's are and why it is so novel? The offerings of Kloudfuse, what differentiates them? So
when customers used to ask me like, hey, how are you different from the traditional observability vendors like Datadog or Splunk or like Dynatrace? So I used to give them this analogy of the 5 C's. The first C is like the cardinality. So think of like you have different attributes to your data. When you take the Cartesian product of those attributes, it can go really high in the order of like multiple billions to the billions. That's called as a cardinality. The second and the foremost is most of the customers at the large scale want the control of the data.
Why do they need control of the data?
Because their volume is going really high. Imagine like companies like Workday, Zscaler generating petabytes worth of data. If they were to send that data to the traditional SaaS-based observability vendors, the egress ingress cost itself will kill them. And people want to have the better control of the data because they want to bring their own interfaces to work on top of the data. Right. So that's why having the data control, giving the data control to the customers is very important. That's the second C.
Wonderful.
If I go and talk to any like CTO or like CFO, the next obvious C is the cost. There are so many like anecdotal incidents where, hey, my observability bill went to multiple millions of dollars.
Wow.
Like there was an article from like Coinbase paying like close to $100 million to one of the observability vendors. The cost is one of the obvious things. You want to like reduce the cost. The next is you want to consolidate all the data. It used to be like very fragmented.
The problem consolidation solves, is it directly proportional to cost?
Yes, because consolidation comes from the fact that if I have like 5 tools, can I consolidate to one tool like Kloudfuse? Can I consolidate different streams of data into one unified database?
Got it.
So these are like the different ways of like the consolidation. To the end customer, what matters is like there is no operational headaches of maintaining multiple products or multiple streams of the data.
Good.
Everything is unified, and you can traverse from one data to the another data. And the last important C is the causality, which is what like many of like the AI models are solved. And then we had done it some human intervention based way of reinforcement learning based mechanisms also.
So when you say causality, you're solving issues real time. Is that what it means?
We are helping the developers get to the root cause of the problem in real time with the traversal of the minimal data.
Wonderful. So basically, you're achieving cost efficiency, you're achieving efficiency in real time, tackling the issues real time, reflecting the metrics real time, correct? And you're consolidating. That's a big issue which you are trying to solve. And so these are all the unique features of Kloudfuse, which you've tackled.
You can sum it up like that.
Yeah, but why isn't it fully agentic? Why are you part human, part agentic? Or
still, if you look at like the agentic, right, there are like L1, L2, L3, L4, L5,
Yeah.
L5 with the AGI.
yeah,
So we are somewhere in like L3 layer because you still need agentic approach to get to the mundane incidents, and that the human brain has to give some input if the agentic approach is not absolutely correct.
right. So you don't see this technology going fully agentic in near future. It's going to take some time.
There are a bunch of like startups who are working on the agentic.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting approach, but the time will tell how that agentic approach can fully solve the problems.
Yeah.
I think it will solve
Yeah.
probably 80 to 90% of the problems. For like really hard problems, still the human brain has to be involved. At least stack ranking the root causes. The agent can tell you like, hey, these are the 5 or 6 potential problems.
Yeah.
But to get to the real root cause, the
Yeah.
human brain has to get involved.
Wonderful. So Krishna, you've got like really big labels like Zscaler, Workday, you name it. They are relying on your technology at Kloudfuse. Why do you think that they picked you over your competitors? Other than, I understood your 5 Cs, but really, what is it that makes you very robust, your company or your approach?
It's like the past history of like two plus decades of like the data and building the robust systems. We had assembled like a really strong team which delivered the kind of the requests they were like posing, and also the pace of the innovation also. Like in like less than like 4.5 years, we solved some of the hard problems in the observability streams like metrics, logs, events, and traces, and even some patent pending things like, hey, how do you do fingerprinting of the logs? How do you do really high cardinality of the metrics?
Amazing.
How do you efficiently do the tracing?
Amazing.
Then also, like we work very closely with the customers to understand what are the requirements from them so that we can morph our product to their requirements.
Yeah.
Because if you end up working with like large customers like Workday and Zscalers, if we solve at their scale, then you can solve at the smaller companies also. In fact, like we had like really good customers like Innovator, Entropy, and Tata back in India, which leveraged our platform.
Wonderful. So, Krishna, look, you had so many accomplishments as a founder. All the youth look up to you for advice as a first-time founder or a repeat founder. What are some of things you can share with them? So, I want to ask you, what does it take to raise money from someone like Sequoia? It's everybody's dream. It's like the top tier VC in Silicon Valley. And you did it so many times with Sequoia, and you have their confidence. What is it like to raise money with VC like Sequoia? What do you have to get right?
So, I raised money from Sequoia back in like Springpath days, which is like 2012. So, Sequoia used to like the tier 1 VCs used to believe in like strong team and really deep technology and the domain expertise. Okay.
Yeah.
So, literally with like 10 to 12 slides, we are able to raise our like Series A. So, we crisply presented our idea, what it is going to solve to the customers, and what are the proof points we have got from the customers.
Right.
If you have a clarity of the thoughts, people say like, essentially, how are you addressing the 5 T's of the startups? Like, what's your team, traction, technology, timing, and the TAM? If you crisply present it in a way so that it becomes convincing, then raising from the tier 1 VCs should not be a problem. In fact, like whatever the learning I got from my journey at Springpath and Kloudfuse, I've been working with at least like a dozen plus startups in like different areas, whether it's like data or like security or like AI.
So this is as an advisor or as an investor?
Both as an advisor and investor. In most of the companies, I put like a token amount because pretty much I want to show the appreciation or the fact that my skin is in the game.
Yeah.
And then also I allocate some time for the advisor. Some of the companies like Entropy, Flan, P0 Security, Andromeda, these are like doing like extremely well in the market.
So there you go. You started your angel investment journey as well. On that note, I want to ask, in today's day and age, with so many founders in the AI space, what is your advice on them picking their idea? I know you talked about TAM. I know you've got your 5 Ts, but really, the kids are dropping out of college. Look, you had the unfair advantage. Your co-founders are from IIT, and you're a bit senior yourself. So you're in the ecosystem of really bright people. But what about the kids of today who are, I work with second-year engineering students who are building AI products with me. What is your advice to them?
So most of the investments are like going towards like the AI. If you look at like even in that layer, like potentially at like the model level, the platform / the infrastructure for building the agentic or the end application and the application space.
Yeah.
The application space is like is a huge space. Like,
explain what kind of applications.
I mean, it could be like, hey, there used to be like a sales guy who's making the calls. Can I convert that into an agentic SDR or an agentic SRE or agentic SOC, the security operations guy, SecOps, or like agentic marketing or agentic sales, agentic CRM. So there are many flavors of this like coming along. I think the key point is like, how are you differentiating and how are you providing the scale and accuracy of those agentic applications, especially you're in the application space. If you're in the below layer with respect to platform and infrastructure, what are the efficiencies problems you're solving? What are the reliability, availability, serviceability problems you're solving? And especially when it comes to the model, how are you better with respect to different kinds of the data, multimodal data, whether it be like text, structured, unstructured, or it could be sitting in documents or audio, video files, or any conversation. So these are the different layers I can think of.
Wonderful. And you are very big on unstructured data. Your observability IP is on working on unstructured data. So what are some of the ways to hone your skills in working with unstructured data?
Yeah, that's one of the areas which I have been like debating, especially enterprises have quite a bit of like both structured and unstructured data. It's like with the minimal context, like with the limited amount of the data. Yeah. Because if you go to the LLMs, they have like volume of data. That's why they are able to give you the precise answers.
Yeah.
Can we build a better model there for the small data? Can we build the better context there? And typically operations last for multiple hours to days.
Yes.
Like a better memory for that.
Yes.
These are some of the hard problems which I've been thinking about.
Wonderful. So Krishna, you're also embarking on a stint as a venture capitalist, or I know you've invested in 16 odd companies, but really, what did you look for in the founder when you invested capital in them? And how do you want to take your journey as an investor further? What is your investment thesis like?
So I look for the people. I value the people with the grit, because if they might come and pitch an idea. If that idea might work or might not work. There are many startups which are pivoted along the way. But do people have the commitment, grit, and persistence and perseverance to go to the next level so that they can continue the journey and then continue to solve the hard problems?
Yeah.
That's why whether you call it as like the team or the people. And then is there a real problem behind it?
Yeah. Okay. How do you know? Like people come from so
that I can always validate with my own set of like customers by talking to whether it's the customers from like Springpath or the Kloudfuse or VMware or Cisco days. I do some background checks there too, and then based on these two combinations, I make the decision whether it is worth investing my time and capital in those companies. The idea is to take this and build some sort of like a studio eventually. Those are some of the initial thoughts.
Wonderful. And do you want to talk about your the startup venture you're thinking about, the next startup venture, or you want to?
It's too early. The idea is like get enough proof points with respect to the initial existing investments that have done, help them really well. In fact, like I've been working with like a really good team from like Stanford, really good team from like Databricks. There are a couple of like startups in like the security and data space from like really good universities. Once the thesis is formed, because end of the day, the people and the idea, they have to build the product, they have to provide the value for the customers.
Yes.
It should work as a product market fit with respect to the customers so that the customers can write the first check.
Yeah.
Getting the check from the customers is one of the hardest problems in the enterprises. Having gone through the journey at like both Springpath and the Kloudfuse, my goal is to, whatever the knowledge I have gained from like Kloudfuse and Springpath, pass it on to the next set of like founders.
Wonderful. Krishna, I have to ask you a couple of tough questions. I hope you don't mind. You started your journey in Springpath and moonlighting. You were working at VMware, and there were some IP issues, I heard. So you want to talk about how startup founders should tackle IP, because that's one challenge I see a lot of founders are facing. They don't know whether to share their idea with someone when they're hiring. Or what if it doesn't work out? The person walks away with the idea and they start their own. And how did you do that? You were in VMware working a day job.
So I mean, ideas you can keep it in your brain, formulate those theses. Don't like keep any like formal written trail of your idea. Come out clean out of the big companies you are in. Once you are outside, then you can, whatever the ideas you have, you can immediately do like a prototype or a POC, and then you can execute towards like the product. That's the best and the simple way. In fact, like we faced IP issues later also during the Springpath days. Another startup came and like sued us with respect to the IP infringement. We followed like the same policies with respect to showing the trail of how we have developed that IP and how that IP is different from the IP they were claiming as a conflict.
What is the best way to keep a trail of the IP? Do you have to show
keep every like document, whether it is your in like Google Docs or like piece of paper, or like when the idea part originated, ideally pen it down with like the date and the time when it was done, so that you can show like the proof that, hey, my idea was like formed this particular date with this particular time, so that you can defend any issues with respect to IP.
Yeah, and the IP filing costs a lot of money. So do you suggest?
Yeah, typically I suggest filing a provisional patent with multiple ideas combined into one provisional patent.
Yeah.
And then once you raise the money, then, or like once you raise the capital, then you can file the individual patents for each provision within that provisional patent as an independent claim and an independent patent.
Wonderful. And if we run into a bad investor or a bad teammate, how do you handle that, like in a startup scenario?
Yeah, I mean, like this founder-investor marriage is like always very interesting. When having worked with like all the tier 1 VCs and like very friendly VCs like Krishna Yaddanapavar and Satish Dharmaraj from like Redpoint. And also I work with like some of the early stage VCs also. I would say not only look for like the firm, but also look for the partner. Do they have the right mindset to work with the founders? What aspects can they help? One of the biggest requests the founders have with respect to the help for the early part of the journey is like whether can they help with respect to hiring the team, the right team. Because as a technologist, you can build the product. The team is like very important. Can they help with respect to both engineering and non-engineering hiring? Can they make the right introduction to the customers?
Correct.
Can they follow through those introductions?
Yes.
Because you just don't want an introduction and that goes cold.
Yeah.
And then the deal falls apart. You need that constant follow through. Act as a bridge between the vendor or the person whom they know inside the company to the startup, so that they can help along that journey. And then be a friend, because as a founder, it is a very lonely journey.
Yeah.
Many times like highs are really highs, lows are really lows. Sometimes you feel like crying.
Yeah.
So be that friend who can help you in your lows and hive to help improve in a better way.
Amazing. That's a really great advice. There's one question I have to ask you. You are from BITS Pilani. Your core education came from BITS, and you work with IITians from your co-founders are IITians. So how do you contrast the education which you got and which they got? Like, what makes your education system different than theirs?
Yeah, I think I would say both BITS and IITs are of like the similar standards. We had like really good like working relationship with my co-founders in the past in my earlier jobs, whether like VMware or like Springpath. When I look back with respect to Kloudfuse and Springpath, and they are like, especially IITians are like really sharp guys to work with. I really enjoy brainstorming newer ideas, newer concepts, and validation of our idea or my ideas with the fellow IITians. It has been like a great journey so far.
Wonderful. And the BITS, is it more relaxed? Do you feel BITS Pilani? Because they have like you can take a drop here. And
back in my days, I mean, that wasn't an option. I finished like the complete like 4 years, but the journey was like really amazing. We were like surrounded by really some of the brightest people.
Yeah.
And then again, there is quite a bit of like entrepreneurial or like a startup kind of like a spirit within the BITS people and BITS campus also. And especially from all my investments, most of my investments have been with the BITS and the IITs, more towards like the BITS because I come from BITS and also part of like the BITS Spark. So, these days, amazing startups have come out of like BITS, like whether like Postman or Pixel or Flam and Entropy, all these guys like multiple like unicorns. I really enjoy working with the BITSians.
Wonderful. So Krishna, you work on so many ventures now. You'll obviously have a playbook. So what is your playbook from -1 to +1? As in, there is a talk about 0 to 1, but do you have like a playbook from -1 to +1 where you've thought about an idea, you don't know what to do, and then you convert it into like a solid product, like conversations into customers? How do you go about that? What's your playbook?
Yeah. So especially -1 to 1, I have applied in bunch of like startups I have invested in. So initially it starts off like saying like, hey, you have seen the problem from your like past experience or past customer conversations. And then you try to map to the people who can solve that problem.
Right.
Go talk to them. Give them the confidence that they can build a product, a company based on that idea. Convince them, form the team. And then as part of the team itself, start validating with the customers so that they get even more confidence in the idea.
Right.
This is the ideation phase. After the idea is formed, help them execute and talk to the right investors so that they get to hear what the investors say. Right. Because Silicon Valley is like expensive. You need like capital to build a really good team.
Yeah.
So help them raise the funding and that actually help them build the product. Yeah. So -1 to 0 is all about like initially starting the company. 0 to 1 is all about building the product, how that product solves the customer's problem. Is there a product market value? Is there a product market fit? So that you can take that initial idea to the end customers and solve the real problem so that they can pay for the product that the startup has built.
Right.
Until they reach a particular revenue. Let's say it could be like $1 million ARR or a $2 million ARR, so that at least you see the repeatability among the customers and also growth within the customers with respect to your product. Once you get that clear indications, then you move on to the next startup. That's the idea. And -1 to 1.
And what is one thumb rule which has worked for you? Because you see, 3 or 4 customers is good. When you start hitting 1 million ARR, whatever has worked for you until then does not work. You have to think differently.
Yeah. So, it depends. Like you might get like a really big deal. You don't want very concentrated to certain customers only. you want where like you see like the repeatability among like the different customers, repeatability with respect to the different use cases. That's when like, yeah, the product has a strength and the product has like the repeatability with respect to the sales. Once that is established, then the product can stand on its own. Until that is established, I strongly believe that there is no point in hiring like the sales guys. The founders have to take the initial idea, go build the product and sell it to the customers, go through the trouble of convincing the customers why they should buy that product.
Yeah.
And then once that is established, then you can repeat that playbook with respect to the other people involved in the organization, whether it's like sales or marketing guys.
And this applies to B2C and B2B both?
I would say, I mean, my experience has been mostly B2B enterprises. It absolutely applies to B2B.
And for
selling for B2B, especially enterprises, is really hard.
Why do you say that?
Because the enterprises don't pay at all until they get the value out of the product. Forget about like paying more and the repeatability of the sales.
Got it.
I mean, I have talked to quite a few like B2C customers also, B2C startups also. They mentioned that the similar problems exist in the B2C also.
Wonderful. So, there is a concept called design partners. Is that coming in the -1 to 1?
I would say when you are ideating, work very closely with your design partners, tell them what you're planning to build, bring them to your internal media like Slack or Teams or Google Hangouts so that you can talk to them on a weekly basis. Like, hey, this is what we have developed this week. Give us the feedback.
Yeah.
So that has a lot of like weightage along the way because you don't want to go after like a month or like 6 months saying that like, hey, I built this, does it solve your problems? Yeah. Having that continuous loop with respect to the design partners and the customers is very, very important.
And do they pay you when you do that?
No, typically that's why there's a design partners, customers, and the paid customers. So the early design partners are, because they are investing their time, that time is more valuable than the dollar amount. But these days I have been advising the founders like, hey, just take some dollar amount or token amount so that they feel that their skin is in the game.
Yeah, wonderful. So Krishna, I would have loved to pick your brain more. I did have questions about crossing the chasm, how to, what do you mean by minimum viable or minimum lovable product? Maybe I'll take it up next time. I know you're very busy. Thank you so much for making the time. And I wish you all the very best in your VC venture and your startup venture.
Thank you. It was my pleasure talking to you.
Wonderful.